disparaging names. And their complaints to administration were ignored and they were told to ignore those people. When one African American student was called racial slurs, that one day it was enough. And a race riot ensued, and it continued, fights all day long with students being sent to the hospital and home. In 1983, I personally was told by my guidance counselor that I was not college material. From 6th grade until 8th grade, my African American friends and family members and I were called racial slurs, picked on and bullied with no adult intervention. So I got into a lot of fights in an attempt to defend my honor. 2004 and 2005 school year, my children were called the N-word and told to go back to Africa while walking through the high school campus to IMS after getting off the school bus. September 2014, prior to entering kindergarten, there was an African American student in elementary school who was reading and writing her name and functioning well above her age and grade level. But by the time she entered 1st grade, her teacher began to contact her mother, telling her she needed to be in learning support classes. Her mother refused to allow her daughter to be labeled and believed wholeheartedly that her daughter was more than capable, and she had proven that in the past. The teacher was believed to have a bias against African American students. There had been other complaints about that particular teacher, but ultimately, Mom decided to move the child out of the classroom and out of the district. She was cyber schooled for the remainder of that school year, but she re-entered public school in 2nd grade, and since leaving the Bethel Park school system, the student has been on high honor roll. Part of my community work here was the development of the Samuel and Anna Mae Richardson Community Garden. And it was formed in an attempt to address the issues that were happening in our community that would bring us together. The goal was to bring different backgrounds of people together and give an opportunity to work in a garden, learn about each other, and develop healthy and friendly relationships. On October 2014, 2 African American students were riding on a tech bus and were called the N-word. Threats were on social media. Parents were outraged and demanded that something be done. So this was the introduction to STAND, the Stand Against Negativity and Discrimination Club that was formed at the high school by my sister Tracy, who is the only professional African American member, long-term staff member for the Bethel Park School District. The Department of Justice was called in to help facilitate educational activities and discussions around tolerance and acceptance. And then this past year, my 11-year-old grandson was continually being called the N-word on his school bus ride to NAMS. I'm sorry. In recent years, these types of incidences have impacted the entire district, resulting in early dismissals and closing of schools because of threats that were igniting fear and terror for our students of color. There are threats that are not always reported because they believe that nothing will be done to stop it. These are just highlights of instances that have plagued our district and municipality for years. There are countless stories I can share, way too many to ever present in this forum. And I didn't come here to just rehash the past. Today I want to talk to you about what has been done since I was contracted by the previous administration and school board, and our next steps moving forward. So I'm here to face the challenges and fight for a better, greater, kinder, more loving, and ism-free Bethel Park. I want to applaud you all today for your desire and decision to begin the healing process by treating the wounds of the past and finding solutions that will be beneficial to the Bethel Park School District and the entire municipality. Let me establish one thing. From the onset of this presentation, there is no blame here. I truly believe that I'm here today making this presentation because it is past time to address systemic ills that continue to wreak havoc, and it is time to systemically address the eradicate this disease. Over the past few years, I've had the great pleasure of working with some of Bethel Park students at the high school level. My initial interaction with them was at grade level assemblies right here in this auditorium, where I explained the initiative, told them how valuable and important each of them were, and invited them to join us. The outcomes so far was that out of the entire student body, which I understand is approximately 1,000 students, 25 of those students signed up. The only requirement to participate, to my knowledge, was that parental permission was to be granted. I also had an introductory meeting with the staff at the high school prior to meeting with the students. I asked a series of questions like, how many races are there? Do you know the answer to that question? How many races are there?
Racists?
No, not racists. Races, R-A-C-E-S.
How many at our high school?
How many are there, period?
Oh.
Anyone have an answer? School board? Any thoughts?
25?
Anyone else? There's actually one race, the human race. I lost my spot, sorry.
Could you repeat those statistics that you said about how many students were in your program?
There are 25 students that were signed up. Year one, 12 students attended the majority of the sessions that we had. The demographic breakdown of that is there were 6 white students, 5 black students, 1 Asian student, 1 student that was 2 or more races, 1 Hispanic, and 1 Pacific Islander. In year 2, we had 19 students that were invited to rejoin the group. 7 students attended the majority of the meetings. 4 of them were white, 1 was black, 1 was Asian, 1 was 2 or more races. I'm sorry, I forgot to reach back and tell you what slide I'm on. I'm going to 6. The demographics are on the slides that you guys have in front of you. I don't know if you can control your own or if it goes off of what he's doing. But the demographics are on slide 4 and 5.
Do you mind if I ask questions?
No, I don't.
So, do you have any sense of why there weren't many more students than that who participated?
I don't know why there weren't more students than the 25 that were here in the first year, but the following year, the students that came back, most of them were seniors. So we had seniors that were in AP classes that had really rigorous classwork that they had to focus on. And our periods that we met were 5th and 6th lunch periods.
The periods were during the lunch periods?
Yeah, the sessions were during the lunch periods.
So do you have any idea of could advertisement occur? Could it be a different time period? I mean, have you thought about all those things about how to increase?
I have,
Okay,
okay.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
We had 12 sessions the first year, 6 during fifth grade lunch period and 6 during this fifth and sixth period lunches. We had 2 faculty members who participated. This is in year 1. One of the faculty members were in each session, and together we developed a mission statement, a vision statement, objectives, and value propositions for the initiative. Number 7 slide. The mission that was created was to bring a diverse population of students. And mind you, this is what the students developed. To bring a diverse population of students and faculty together as one school body, representing acceptance, understanding and change within our community, ultimately leading to a safe place for self-expression. Slide 8. The vision, we aspire to make a great change in which no one faces inequality. We hope to make all see the beauty in each other and stand up for each other in times of need like these. We want to include all and create an equal and inspiring environment. Number 9 are the objectives that they developed. To educate staff and students at meetings and assemblies, to add resources to help facilitate and further the mission and vision, to develop open dialogue between students and administration. And anyone can ask any questions or stop me at any point, okay?
Have any of these objectives been met or been pursued?
We haven't implemented any of the objectives yet. And number 10 was their value proposition. For those who believe in equality and have seen many struggle trying to fit in and want to help, here is how you can. If you believe in change for a positive school community, we need you. We need to hear your voice. You are important, you matter, and we hope to make all know that. We wish to break down any negative ways of thinking to create a safe place for all. We need strong voices like yours. Slide 11. And that talks about year 2's accomplishments. We named the initiative. I need my glasses, I can't see it there. Thank you. Okay, we named we named the initiatives and we reevaluate the mission and vision statements, and we drafted a recruitment plan and marketing strategy. That should answer your question, Mrs. Dobis.
Could you do a brief overview of that recruiting plan and marketing strategy?
So at the end of the first year, we had a goal of going and doing an activity with the school body during the lunch period time, but we were not able to do that. We had a document that had about 32 questions in which they were to find people who were like them or like who had done some of the activities that they had done. So that didn't work out, but we also had Operation Hugs and Kisses, which were Hershey's Kisses and hugs. And they were put into little envelopes, and the students were able to put words of affirmation on the back of those things that I actually typed up and sealed the bags with. And the student body, the kids that were participating in the initiative committee enjoyed going into the lunchroom and being able to share a hug and a kiss and tell somebody that they mattered. So that was the only thing that we were able to do in trying to recruit others to come into the program at the end of 2019 school year. This year, we had drafted a recruitment plan and a marketing strategy. The kids wanted to do some social media work around that, creating a safe space where people could talk and have honest communication. We were not able to do that, and we just had some barriers that we weren't able to implement, and I understand why, because of the risk to the district, so that we needed to get everything approved by the superintendent. And so this 2019-2020 year, Joe Villani was in all of our sessions. So the things that we were doing, he was able to give us the authorization and actually be a part of the planning process.
Is the STAND club still in existence?
It is in existence.
And have you worked with them at all, or?
Well, I work with STAND all the time, but this is more the idea of this whole, what you probably saw in my proposal. I don't know if you guys read that yet, but that was my goal, was to have a district-wide initiative, and it still is. And I just happened to be allowed to start my program and begin the initiative in the high school.
And has the SGA or student government or any, have you marketed it to them? I didn't market it, and the only interaction that I had with the entire student body was that initial meeting introducing the initiative. We put, like I said, we put a plan together in hopes that we'd be able to get on the closed circuit TV, BP Hawks TV during homeroom sessions. Again, the social media approach to reach out to more students and, get more engagement. But those things did not happen. As a matter of fact, COVID, we did have a plan to implement some of that the second year, this past school year, and COVID-19 kind of stopped us from approaching that or implementing that. I know that there are several members of the board, and the board as a whole is very interested in this initiative, very interested in it being district-wide, but very interested in, the whole issue. I mean, currently because of discrimination and various things like that. So, I think we probably have to have more discussion than just this.
I agree.
In order to formulate a clearer plan that includes also our support and our expectations for a program like this.
Absolutely. That's part of the proposal as well. I don't know if you guys saw it.
The proposal being the other part of the email that you sent us?
Yes, I sent 2 documents.
And the board did receive that.
Yeah, they received it. I don't know if they read it. Thank you. So I'm just gonna talk about moving forward and next steps.
Please.
I previously submitted a comprehensive proposal to the former superintendent, which I believed methodically and intentionally addresses systemic isms that we face in our district. The proposal recommended a district-wide approach that would include everyone from the school board to kindergartners. Today, I present a proposal recommending that the Bethel Park School Board Commit to supporting our efforts, which you just said that you do, to make Bethel Park School District a community where every member feels known, valued, and appreciated. We truly are better together. I believe, wait, sorry. I believe that we made some good strides in hearing from the students that participated in the inaugural stages. They were able to share their thoughts, their ideas, and provide some insights based on their lived experiences. I said from the beginning, and believe it to this day, that all of our children are brilliant and will lead the way. Their passion and commitment to creating a better place for everyone to learn is apparent in their development of their mission, vision, objectives, and value proposition. So this is the springboard that I propose that we use to catapult us into the future, our future. It is my goal to help further the mission of the Bethel Park School District, to lead an educational partnership with the community, maintaining an environment that challenges all students to reach their potential as lifelong learners and responsible members of society. But what I need from you, the school board and the Bethel Park School District, I need your commitment to the initiative. I need open and honest self-evaluation, intentional effort to see racism, injustice, and discrimination of any kind, to listen actively to those directly impacted by systemic racism, injustice, and discrimination, and accept their lived experiences as undeniable truth. Be the change, evaluate and examine where we are now, decide where we want to be, and implement the steps that we need to take to get us there. In closing, thank you very much for your time.
So, Mrs. Ford, before you
Yes.
go, there were a few questions I had.
Your
Okay.
microphone might not be on.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. A few questions that I had before you go. One question is, systemically within the district, were there any obstacles that you saw in, that we may be able to correct in helping this program succeed?
I just personally, and I'm gonna be 100% transparent with you, I think this was one of another Band-Aid experience
Okay.
from the beginning. It was a Band-Aid experience. And I'm gonna just add, the task that I was given was to, everyone knows how busy high school is, how the students were really driven and wanted to participate but couldn't because they're in school to learn, even though this is a part of learning. I really believe that starting at an elementary level, but also working with teachers and administration and school board to face some of the things that we need to deal with, has to happen. I don't think we can heal and create a better environment for all until we do that serious work.
So what could we do as a district or as a board that would help this become more than a Band-Aid and actually start enacting systemic change in our district?
I believe that what Mrs. Dobis alluded to was very important. I think that the board, through my facilitation, has to devise a plan that they want implemented throughout the district. I can come with a million thoughts and ideas, but it has to be driven from the decision makers.
Okay.
So I think,
Yeah.
do you have something else?
Well, with that said, do you think your consulting would be better served consulting with us in the administration at this point to help develop those?
I think that's gonna, so that's interesting. So yes, I think that we need to develop and devise a plan. But I also think that there are some activities that we can do at the level to deal with students as well. But I think those things can be across the district. I think it will be beneficial to kind of do things in a way that promote, because we have to do something now that's not going to take years to begin to implement. And the level of commitment that's going to be required, even if it's just a designated few of the board members that participate on a committee that begins to form that, we have to do something now.
So as far as next step, and I know Ken was asking this also, but I mean, is this something where we should have a maybe a committee of Ford, administration, board members, somebody like that to come up with, what's the detailed plan, what's the action plan that we need to work on? I think that what you're doing, the message in your slides and everything is fantastic. It seems like it's isolated to a relatively small group, though, when you consider that we've got 4,200 students in the district. And maybe that's what a group or a committee should be looking at, is how do you get this into every group? How do you scale it to the broader student body, and maybe through also working with parent-teacher organizations, right, and everybody who engages with students, how do we get that message there? And I think it needs some work, that actual implementation or execution side of, how do you actually get it, build this program into those other organizations also? How do you have them carry forward the message so that you get more scale? But I think we need some type of a committee or something to help drive that.
Exactly. And in addition to that, all community stakeholders. So we're talking about a committee that consists of school board members, administration, students and teachers, staff members, people, like you said, and parent-teacher organizations. So I think that we have to have a representation of all the stakeholders.
What was the last thing you just said? We haven't had what?
We have to have representation from all stakeholders.
So, Mrs. Ford,
Yes.
switch gears a little bit. Another question I have, there's a lot of groups out there, or larger entities, that have a lot of resources to bear in bringing programs like this into the district. Mm-hmm. Do you have resources that you would be able to share with us?
I definitely do. I work with a number of different consultants that work in the anti-racism space and conflict management and resolution types of work, and planning, organizational development. That's part of what I do too, strategic planning. So there is a lot of people that are local people, and there are also different departments within universities that I've worked with that I can bring to the table.
Mrs. Dovis, may I ask a question? Am I on?
Sure. I don't think anybody's on but me.
I thought it was on. Yeah, it's on. I guess I'm just not talking loud enough.
I can hear you.
Thank you for being here tonight,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Ford. I guess I have a couple different questions or comments. I think that we need to get this to a bigger audience. I think that's been the consensus of everybody in the room. Is there a way to put this as part of a curriculum or a lesson plan or something like that, or an assembly? Obviously, I believe the younger you start this program, the more successful you're going to be. I mean, but that doesn't mean we need to ignore the high school students or middle school, et cetera. But any comment on that?
So I think that making it part of a lesson plan is good, but there are a couple of things that we have to make sure that the curriculum that we have is an honest, truthful reflection of our history and the American history. There's a lot of work that we have to do. And so it's just, again, because looking at the gaping wound, it's going to require some intentional and methodical work that is absolutely paramount in order for something like this to be successful. And I can imagine Bethel Park being one of those school districts that people down the road look at and say, now that's a group that did the work. We have work to do, and we can't be faint at heart. We have to be committed, and we have to be supportive of the efforts. And this is a goal to change what has been, just part of what we've been doing for a long time. And you can't just, what's the definition of insane, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? We just can't continue to do that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with you. I think that my major in college was comprehensive social studies, basically history, and I think I didn't learn history until I started reading on my own and really dug deeper and found more information. But I think hopefully all of our curriculum is being taught properly, so I would hope that if we implemented something like that, that it wouldn't just be a glazing over, but it would be factual and informational.
Exactly.
So from what everyone has been saying, I think that right now we start small with you and a couple of us and a couple administrators. I think we have to have all stakeholders involved eventually, but I think we need a clearer sit down and outline. So if you're willing to do that, we'll organize that and get a smaller group, so then we can then plan for the larger group, and then we can plan for the curriculum and everything else. And but right now, I think we just have to get a clearer handle on what's available, what we can do, and different things like that. And I know there are several board members who are very interested to become involved, and we'll have some administrators and so forth and set up a meeting.
Okay.
And whoever else you want to bring to the meeting too,
Okay.
To help us start this process. But I don't think we can start with like everybody right now. We have to start small and then start to quickly move outwards.
Well, you can't, if you don't have a plan devised, your destination is unknown. So we have to figure out how we want it to look in order to create the strategic initiatives and plans.
Thank you so much for coming tonight and helping us
Thank you.
to move forward in this area.
And I really appreciate that. And just, I want you guys to know that last slide, the video, were the kids that some of the kids that participated the first year. And those students were interested in continuing to help, even though they were leaving, some of them were leaving to go to college. So I just want to make sure that you understand that part of my reason why is to bring them back after college to be productive in our community. I didn't leave, and I want those people who really care to be here. All right, thank you guys so much. Anybody else have any more questions?
I'd just like to add, I really want to apologize for yours and your family's experiences and anybody's experiences within our district that make them feel anything less than as welcome as the community's made me feel over time. That's not who our district is. I've overwhelmingly heard from people sharing that that's not who our district is, but we can't just not tolerate discrimination or prejudice any longer. We have to actively assume that it's happening and attack it. So I want to apologize, and I am committed to attacking that discrimination. Anybody who feels that they can make others feel unwelcome in our district.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nagel. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda for business items.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Nagel and seconded by Mrs. Rule. Any comments on the agenda items? Any discussion about that? Okay, Mr. Karazi?
It's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, motion passes 9-0. Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2020 and May 26th, 2020.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Spacuzza,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Rule. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Karazi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Before I move on, I forgot we're on, I believe, Facebook Live. I would like to remind anybody who is not currently in the auditorium with us that you can submit public comments to publiccomments@bphawks.org if you are not here, and we will read them aloud at the appropriate time. We already have received many of them, but many comments, but also you can still send them in, and if we don't get to them or they don't come through at the beginning of the meeting, they should be into our emails by the end of the meeting.
We should probably remind people, I think we ran into this in the last meeting, that there was some kind of last-minute comments that were submitted. The Facebook feed is about 30 to 45 seconds delayed from the live feed, so that's why it gives people may have submitted questions and wondering why didn't we read it. Well, we probably didn't get them then until about a minute after the meeting had ended, or until we got past that session. So yeah, try to submit them before, at least like a minute or so before we get to that section of the agenda.
I'd like to announce executive sessions on June 16th, 2020 and June 23rd, 2020 for personnel, other legal matters, and to receive information. Are there any committee reports at this time? Mrs. Rule?
From the AIU, they have raised over $1.5 million in grants to help our 42 school districts in Allegheny County with the expenses and that they will be incurring or have incurred due to COVID-19, which is a great thing for us to have. To get that much money from all of the foundations. The interesting note that they made was that they are concerned because charter school funding is positioned to surpass what we are now paying in our pension funds. And that's really a reality that all school districts will face even more so going forward. The other thing is that Steele Center has been so excited to be training what's considered today the essential workers, and we had many of our students who actually obtained jobs during the season when we couldn't be working. They were out helping in the hospitals and helping anyone that they could that were in the essential workforce categories. So we were very excited that they were able to contribute in that way. Some of them even got jobs going forward out of it. One of the questions raised by other district schools was whether they would have to continue to support VOTEC education because they're all scaling back in their costs. But VOTEC education is mandated by the state, and they were told that they have to continue sending students. So if anybody was worried about students not being able to go, it is mandated that they send students to these VOTEC schools that request it. Dr. Lutz, who is our superintendent of record, The good thing coming from COVID-19 is that the South Hills area superintendents have realized that working together you can accomplish so much, and that the South Hills schools have more in common sometimes than they do county-wide. And therefore, they really have gotten together a task force, and they have started talking about how we may have to share resources, maybe share busing, those types of things, because many of the schools have already had to cut back, and they're worried about having money going forward to meet all of the standards. So they're looking at ways that they can work together, even some of the curriculum items they're looking at. So that's a good thing that came out of the COVID-19. They're looking at the reports that we just received. PSBA just put out a task force report for COVID-19. It's 135 pages. Heaven help anybody if they have to follow it page by page. And they've been reviewing that to see what's going to be expected of the schools going back in the fall. That's it.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, at this time, we'll ask for any public comments on agenda items. For the people in the audience, there are 2 microphones available. If you'd like to come up, please state your name and address before you begin.
Roger Zelt, 200 Iroquois Road. And I just wanted to say, Vicki Flota, I'm going to miss hearing from you. And I want to verify Ms. Ford's statement about the Richardson family, how prominent they are in Bethel Park history. There were some Richardsons in my class at Bethel Park High School 40-some years ago, including probably your aunt or cousin Mary and others. But also, I wanted to speak both as a physician and parent of current students in the school district with regard to what I'd heard about the possibility of not opening for in-person instruction in the fall. And just to relay my opinion about that, which is that in-person instruction, I think, really has no equal, no peer. It's definitely more effective than other types of instruction, A. And B, there's a lot we don't know about this COVID-19 virus, and there are a lot of expert opinions, often conflicting, and sort of we're learning as we're going. But I think it's becoming clear that while it's pretty transmissible, its lethality is not what we thought, especially among younger people such as our students and the majority of our faculty. So I think that on balance, it is probably riskier to create the definite harm to our students with not having in-person instruction versus the possibility of infection from this one particular disease. So I just wanted to state that as my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Zelt. I do want to remind everybody that the comments at this time during the meeting should be directed to items on the agenda. I don't think we have anything on the agenda referring to the opening of the school, so we will read some of those comments that have come in from the public and so forth after the meeting. I think there's one comment from the community that is directed to the agenda. Is that Do you all agree with me from what you can see?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. This comment is from Jim Means, 3485 South Park Road. Undoubtedly, the Bethel Park School Board will shortly enact a budget of $92.45 million. This represents an increase of $3.4 million over last year's budget. While this may seem reasonable, it should be noted that our finance officer currently projects expenditures of approximately $86.5 million. That means if the proposed budget of $92.45 million is spent, it would represent an increase of approximately $6 million in yearly expenditures. Clearly, this cannot be justified. Such an increase would be equal to the increase of expenditures from the 2014-15 budget through the 2019-2010 budget. I think that should be 2020 budget. Why was such a large increase in expenditures budgeted? Does the board intend to spend the full amount? To spend $92.45 million would be reckless. The board has already conceded it would not be good for the community to raise taxes to the previously high level. To recklessly increase spending by $6 million a year would also harm the community. Does anyone on the board see any other comments pertaining to agenda items? Okay. So at this time, anyone else from the audience want to comment? Okay, so at this time, we have 30 items on the consent agenda. Does anyone want any of those items held out at this time? We agreed to put these on the agenda last week, but is there any item that anyone wants to be held out? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Motion made by Mr. Nagel and seconded by Mr. Christensen. Any comment on the consent agenda items?
I'd just like to remind the public that this is a new format. We discussed these things in committee, and things that we don't feel need further discussion, we put on a consent agenda in order to speed up the process in the regular meeting, just so people in the public understand.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel. Mr. Karazi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Mr. Scalzo, will you take the curriculum committee, please?
Yes.
Each item separately, please.
Yes. So under curriculum committee, first item is the curriculum facilitators for 2020-2021.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spacuzza. Any questions or comments?
Again, I'm gonna ask, I'm hoping somebody in the first row can answer this. Why does guidance say K through 12 when we only have guidance in 5 through 12?
We have guidance, correct me if I'm wrong, we have guidance 5 through 12. Okay. Okay.
Just one comment on here. I'm going to abstain since my wife is one of these people.
Ah,
If you need help figuring it out, it's the same last name as mine.
okay.
So I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 8 yea, 1 abstention.
Okay, the number 2 item, 2020-2021 student handbooks.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. This item involves all the student handbooks, elementary, New Armstrong, IMS and the high school. This year, we did convene a discipline committee to review some of the discipline contents. However, once COVID hit, we were not able to continue that work with that discipline committee. I'm assuming once we go back to brick and mortar, it will continue its work. But I don't think any significant changes were made because we didn't have an opportunity once the school year was cut off. Go ahead. Handbooks are only sent out electronically now. We don't print them anymore, right? So they're easy to change at this point in time.
Do
Thank
we
you
have
for
to
that update.
Do we have to convene to vote on any changes, since we have to vote on the approval of the handbook?
Okay.
So this would end up being a addendum to the handbook so that all students are aware that the changes are being made. I'm asking more of Amy than anyone,
It
sorry.
wouldn't, no, because we can change it electronically, if we agree to the change, we'll just put it in the handbook. It wouldn't be an addendum.
But we would point this out as a change to the handbook that went out, that we are voting on now, correct? Just so everybody.
Does this go out to the parents
Yeah, you
before
get
the
an email.
beginning of the school year? Oh, it's updated on the website. Okay.
Just to follow up on that question, I know boards typically approve their handbook in June so that the printing can be done, but it doesn't necessarily sound like there's a time constraint that I wonder if you approved it in August, if it still could get turned around to be distributed, then you wouldn't have to approve it twice. It's just, mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't, the handbook contains much more information than just discipline. It contains information about scheduling and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right?
Well,
So it's information that I think parents, but I don't know if it's changed much, you know.
you can easily approve it tonight, knowing that you are making a change potentially to one section, possibly, and then approve a revised handbook in August. And I would term it as a revised handbook instead of an addendum. So I think that makes sense if the board's comfortable with that.
Is there the possibility of that committee convening over the summer months to finalize propositions and maybe to address a couple of the questions that I had asked the board on how we treat discrimination versus bullying?
those are all topics that I know are discussed in the student code of conduct. And so, to vote on them this evening, you're voting any content on those topics, you'd vote that in, and approve it. And if any changes are made, any further changes are made over the summer, you can revise it at any point before the school year starts.
Well, I guess the question I was asking was more contractually. Can the committee that was put together to review discipline, the discipline committee, would they have an opportunity to meet prior to August, prior to a revision, to look at that as well as the questions that I asked?
I think Dr. O'Rourke, did you hear the question?
It's not easy to convene a.
Would this be the proper time to ask that when we reconvene this in the fall? I assume we're going to reconvene it to handle the electronic component of it. When we reconvene it, if we could expand it to also address discrimination, bullying, and our policy and our offense levels for those infractions.
It sounds, the things I'm hearing, and it's so hard to hear with the mask and the voice, but what I'm hearing is there's a lot of work of this discipline committee that, and this has happened in other districts that I work with, that got cut short because of COVID. And I think that it's really critical, important work that has to happen. And that you resume that. It likely is easiest to resume that, especially if you're getting student participation, staff participation at the beginning of the school year. You can approve addenda to your code of conduct. You can approve revisions within the school year. It'll just depend on what content you're changing, whether it's an addendum or a revision. And then the only complication that you have after that is how do you distribute it? Because students need to know what the rules are. And that's primarily the key issue, and getting it approved in June, getting it out in people's hands. So, it's not like this gets put on the back burner until next year. There is an opportunity during the year to make changes, so long as they're communicated effectively.
And we'd be able to expand the scope of that committee also.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So as I understand it then, we're voting on these 4 handbooks tonight, but we know that before school starts, there's going to be some additional information about the dress code that's going to be provided and possibly voted on. And then we are assuming that soon after the start of the school year, this committee continues to reconvene to address some issues. Finish their work and address the issues. Okay. So that sounds good. Any other questions? Okay, open the voting then, please.
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McGregor?
There are 7 total items on Personnel Committee. I'll go through each one. Number 1, approval of extra duty responsibility program for 2020-21.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Christensen. Comments?
This is only fall sports, correct? Which is what we approved for the health and safety plan last week. Okay.
This is fall sports, but our plan we approved was for all sports, all year, right? Yes, that's what I thought. But this is just for the people who are going to be the coaches, yes. Okay. Mr. Carazzi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, item number 2 is a memorandum of agreement with the Bethel Park Federation of Teachers.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spacuzza. Any comments? Please open the voting.
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Number 3 is the acceptance of resignation professional.
Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Turner. Any comments? Mr. Carazzi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Item number 4 is the approval of the 2020-2021 salaries for non-administrative groups.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. Any comments? Okay, Mr. Carazzi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Number 5 is a memorandum of understanding with the Bethel Park Federation secretaries.
Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Christensen. Any comments? Mr. Carazzi?
Voting's open. Motion passes 9-0.
Item number 6 is the memorandum of understanding with the Bethel Park Federation of Teachers.
Second? I need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. Any comments?
Voting's
Mr.
open.
Carazzi?
Motion passes 9-0.
And the last item, number 7, is a change of assignment.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spacuzza. Any comments or questions?
Voting's open.
Mr. Carazzi? Oh,
Vo-
you did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Mr. Christensen, will you take the Finance Committee, please?
Yes. Is this on? Yeah. Under Finance, we have 7 items. I move for number 1, the adoption of the tax rate for the 2021 year to adopt the millage rate of 21.7654. It's a long number with the decimals on real estate taxes.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. Any comments or questions on this? I believe this is the index that we can raise it to because of our exception.
Index plus the exception, yes.
Index plus the exception.
Which the exception was very small.
very, very
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
Moving on to item number 2, I move we adopt the general fund budget of $91.7 million for the 2020-21 school year.
Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. Any discussion?
I'd just like to point out again that there was a comment made earlier. Last year's budget that was approved was 89.034 million. This year's budget is 91.7 million. It's only less than it's $2.6 million increase.
I want to make a comment on that also. I believe Mr. Means had submitted that comment for the agenda items. But just like as Mr. Means, when he was on the board, we adopt a budget. We take a budget planning process that is, I would say, very conservative to make sure that we're accounting for more of the worst case scenarios, as accurate but as conservative as possible. What we've seen over the last couple of years is that as employees leave the district, and while we either trying to rehire them or decide not to rehire them, we see a positive change in the budget or the expenditures because of that, because there's delayed spending. We've also tended to budget for some of our upcoming contracts to cover those, because we would expect increases in salaries to those contracts. Those contracts were not finalized in the last couple of years, so we saw a benefit, a reduction of our expenditures for the last couple calendar years. So that's why this difference of what our actuals versus what our budgets were have come in under budget. On the revenue side, we've also seen some increases due to some of our commercial and residential tax rate and negotiations. And so that's led to a kind of a positive increase on the revenue side over plan, so which has helped to reduce this negative balance. For this year, things don't look nearly as well. I think that, Mr. Krasi's been doing this for a long time. I think he's put together an excellent budget. But there are probably less areas where we're going to see upside in terms of our ability to spend less, and less upside on our ability to collect more in terms of revenue. So, overall, this is an accurate budget. I think it's very accurate, but I don't think it looks good going forward over the next couple of years. I would also like to commend the administration across the board. We had 8 retirements, I believe it is, this year. They were able to identify internal replacements or eliminate the need to hire those 8 people. And that was fantastic. Great savings to the district, 8 positions that are not being filled. I believe we'll still be able to offer excellent education. But however, even with not filling 8 positions, we're seeing a $5.5 million deficit, and mostly that's due to increased costs due to existing contracts, increased costs due to cost of everything going up. So I would say, and I guess the request to the administration and everybody across the district is, we need to continue working harder to reduce costs going forward, because we talked about in just the previous agenda item, the tax rate. We're limited in terms of how much we can raise taxes. Even though we got a very small exception, we've raised taxes barely enough to cover increase in costs, let alone any increase in investment for new initiatives. I mean, that's totally off the table for now and the next few years. So we have to work harder at managing our costs going forward. But thank you for all the hard work, Mr. Krasi and everybody at the administration level putting together this budget.
I'd also like to add that we are increasing taxes. We did decide that right now, due to COVID, the hardships that families were facing, it wasn't the right time to ask for for the referendum, so we pulled that off the ballot. But it would be irresponsible for us to not increase taxes. We just don't, we've been put in a position we can't afford not to increase the taxes. And the prior board even echoed this before they left, to the fact that they expected us to increase taxes for several years to come because of their cut. And Mr. Means was the one who made that comment, that we'd have to go for max increases for years to come. We did pull the referendum off to provide some relief because it's just not the right time, but we also are forced to have to try to make up for shortcomings that were imposed upon us.
Pam?
And in pointing out those numbers, I just want to again thank the administration and Mr. Karazi. This is not easy work for those of us that do budgets for our. For those of us that do budgets for other parts of our lives outside of the school board, these are not easy tasks at all. And we were, as everybody has said, put in a position. So thank you very much for really looking at this and making sure this is where we need to go.
Thank you.
I would just like to say that I want to thank Mr. Karazi for waving his magic wand again to keep it at a $3 million increase. I think he did a wonderful job in working with our principals and everyone to get it to at least that $3 million. I believe that we put infrastructure together for this coming year that we've needed. I think that's been a good investment. My one big concern will be we don't know what any additional costs we are going to have to cover with the COVID-19 with this coming year. What we'll be facing and what additional monies. We haven't focused on that at all. Our focus was on infrastructure, but we're less than 2 months away at starting school, so those figures are going to be coming at us, I think, rather quickly. But hopefully it won't be too damaging and we'll be able to proceed forward, because I think we needed to put that infrastructure that we've been looking for in place. But again, Mr. Karazi and all, thank you so much for getting us to this point.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 7-2.
So the next item on the agenda is the sports medicine agreement. Did we table this or did we postpone it?
That's right. The first vote, just to explain for everybody, the sports medicine agreement was tabled on the May 26th meeting by the board by a vote, and therefore it does need to, by a vote, come off of the table. And so the terminology is there's going to be a motion on the agenda to take the item from the table.
So I move to take from the table the sports medicine agreement that was tabled in the May meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Nagel. Please open the voting.
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
So now I move to adopt the sports medicine agreement, which is, the sports medicine agreement for a contract period of 2020 through 2025 at an annual cost of $30,500 with a 1% annual increase during the life of the agreement.
I need a second. Seconded by Mr. McGregor. This contract we tabled before so that we could finalize the figures and the numbers, which have come down, I think, through our agreement with.
Yes, they have, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open.
I didn't get it. We didn't get it.
Mm. You want to do an all ayes, or and I'll mark them in? Mrs. Dobus?
All in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 9-0.
Correct.
Number 5 in the agenda, I move for the approval of the purchase of information technology equipment.
I need a second. Second. Seconded by Mrs. Turner. Any questions or comments? Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
Item number 6 on the agenda, I move to adopt a partnership agreement with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit for pre-K counts.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spacuzza. Any comments or questions?
I do have a question. There has been some concern about the fact that the building that was picked does not have a private entrance for the AIU to come in and out of. Is that something that we can look into under safety and security, as they won't be Bethel Park students, they would be under the AIU? So there was some concern about those parents coming in and out, and the parents having to drop them off, and the parents being in that building, those kinds of things. I don't know if Dr. G can address that, or, you know, is it set on the building that was picked, or could this be moved based on the fact that some other elementary buildings have exits and entrances?
I wish you yeah, Kim, yeah.
And this is my fault, I should have brought it up earlier. But
Yeah, I wish you would have. My understanding, Beth, is this is the program that, first of all, is limited to Bethel Park students, and we specifically chose that elementary school, and it was approved. We had them come out, look at the facility, and approve the facility prior to contracting with the IU.
Beth, I would just encourage you, there's some concerns at this building just based on entrance and exit and parent, and more of the parents that have to drop them off every day, I think, is the more concern. So if you could help facilitate that, I'd appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay. We should move it first. Item number 7 on the agenda, I move for the approval of donation.
I need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Spacuzza. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll read the details here. And maybe, Matthew, are you in the audience? Maybe you'd like to come up here? So this item, let me read the description on here. So the Board of School Directors approves the administration's recommendation to accept the donation of a project by Eagle Scout and high school student Matthew Kurtz, where he will build 1 to 2 roofed benches near the back door of Memorial Elementary School.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, are you asking if that's like the correct description?
You want to tell us a little bit about the project, a little bit, anything else you want to add to what I read?
Nothing I can really think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, thank you. It sounds like a great project. Okay. This is near the playground area.
the back door where I think it's the kindergartners and first graders are.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic.
And you attended Memorial School?
Yes, I did.
So you saw the need for this?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Great project.
Can I ask one question? Matthew? What troop are you with?
Troop 215.
215. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
Kim, Ms. Turner, will you take other?
I move the Board of School Directors approve Resolution 94-2020 supporting electronic e-grant signatures.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Christensen. Mr. Karazi?
Voting is open. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address any public comments whatsoever to us? And then after that is finished, we will go into the emailed comments and read those also. Any comments from anyone in the
Ken Crowley, 2020 Millennium Court. You can ignore my email comment because I didn't think I would get here in time.
oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah, it lasted long enough I'm here, so that's good. So just to follow up on what Mrs. Rule said, the school year is just a little over 2 months away, and we as families of students in this district are not aware yet of what the plan is for the return to school, and many other districts are already making those decisions and voting on those decisions this month. And I know you guys are working tirelessly on that, so I appreciate everything you're doing in regards to that. But I'm hoping that when you look at that plan that you do take into consideration the feedback from the parents. The parents do want a comprehensive return to school plan that follows the lead of other neighboring districts. And those districts, many of whom we compare ourselves to, have chosen to develop a plan that includes a full return to school for all students, as well as some type of an online academy. Now, whether that is an online academy using our current online academy is up for debate, but I think that you guys are considering Schoology, and Schoology would give you a great resource and a great foundation to be able to have students still be on their current class rosters and attend their current classes remotely if they don't feel comfortable attending school. And I think that is a huge component because there are students who won't be able to attend due to health concerns or concerns about the safety of the school. But I do think we need to look at how we can roll it out to get as many students back in a classroom as possible. It would be a disservice not to do that to our children. And I also think one of the differences between our district compared to these other districts that are considering that plan is that most parents in our community, many families have 2 working parents in their household. And so time is running out for us if we have to make alternate arrangements involving childcare if we don't have a full return to school in the fall. So I just ask you guys consider that and afford as many children as possible full-time return. Thank you.
Hi, Sharon Janisic, 4314 Anna Street. I had a comment that didn't get in time last week, but I did want to say that I do agree with Mr. Nagel in the conversation you were having last week about folding some of our conversations about reimagining Hawk Time and whether we are more interested in the staff planning time necessary for good co-teaching versus breaking up schedules, and including that kind of overarching idea about who we want to be and where we want to go. Knowing that vision helps drive those smaller decisions. And for me, I really want an end to the siloing of general education, special education, and gifted education. When we are all educating together, and working together. We are all part of the family, and all students belong to all teachers. And when we are all able to do those things well, then we can use them as appropriate for the students in front of us, for the needs that they're presenting, whether or not they're identified, whether or not they have an IEP. All teachers knowing how to do those things is so beneficial. And I do want to say, Ms. Ford, thank you so much for sharing your experiences here. I too am excited to do that work, and it is work for us to do. As the community, we have to decide that we won't accept what's going on now. We have a lot of hard work to do about that. And I also appreciate you including all of the isms. I know at the high school there are a lot of groups of students who are not necessarily typical for various reasons. And those intersections of identities become really problematic. The more identities that are historically marginalized a student has, the harder everything is. And we all have a duty to remember that in everything we do. Whether we're talking about students with disabilities, students who are Black, students who are Indigenous, students who are LGBTQ, whatever it is, when all of those identities create weight and create problems, it's our job to create a culture that won't accept that. So thank you, Ms. Ford.
Thank you. Any other public comments from the audience?
Okay, Ron Workmeister, 4750 Robert Drive. First, I want to thank Buzzy Grazzi, Vicki Flota for all their years of service. You guys are going to be well missed. Bethel Park's going to have a big hole without you guys here. So hope your future is great. So again, thank you. What we know is, regretfully, we got to hire a new superintendent. We have to look at what is the requirements. And being on the board for many years here, for 4 years now, I know firsthand how important it is to make sure that we have a very good superintendent. And I know that, regretfully also, most of the people in Bethel Park don't know to what level of importance this really is. I know firsthand, working with Dr. Joe Pasquarella, a previous superintendent, how much work he had done to uncover a lot of problems that we had in the district and a lot of excessive spending and everything else. So I just want to thank him for his efforts too, because we have a much better school district as a result of it. So besides the degrees and years of experience that I know you guys are going to be looking at as to what a superintendent needs, I know that the most imperative trait or quality that I think that's harder to find in a good superintendent is to make sure that they're always looking at the big picture and making sure that there's a lot of good balance of growth and harmony with the students, taxpayers, and then the teachers and staff. We also know that this is going to be a difficult task, so I just want to ask the board to make sure that you look at this being a top requirement, and do your good job at making sure our district is going to go forward with a good superintendent. So thank you.
Any other comments? There were a couple comments from last week that we were not able to read because, as was commented before, we received them right after our meeting was over. So one is from Shayna Willis from 5844 Monongahela Avenue, and she writes, "I'm happy to hear that you will form a committee for Chapter 16 Special Education Law. I hope that it is as robust as its Chapter 14 counterpart. I look forward to having our children included in the conversation." And the other one was from Mrs. Janicek. Did you say not to read it or to read it? Okay. Okay. And then I think we have some others. Would anybody like to read Ms. Facenda's comments? No, this week. They're from, anybody have them up other than me?
I can take that one if you like.
Okay.
Okay, I was just further down the
It's
list.
just, they're short and
Yeah.
yeah.
Sarah Facenda, there's no address provided here, but the email says, to whom it may concern, I am emailing to express my opinion in regards to my son returning to school in the fall. He is a student at Lincoln Elementary. I'm fully behind my son returning to the classroom in the fall. I feel like that precautions definitely need to be taken, but I feel that we are doing more harm than good by keeping them out. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Sturmans, anybody? Go ahead, Ms. Turner.
Dear members of the board, this is Megan Sturman. I am part of a 7th and a 5th grader, and I am in support of sending students to school in person this fall. Thank you.
Okay, and Joey Pope.
I'll take it.
Okay.
Hello, I wanted to write and let you know that we fully support the kids returning to full classes at the schools in the fall. Thank you very much, Joseph Pope.
And there was another one from Stacy Wetzel from 1029 Millennium Drive, Bethel Park. I want to thank you for all that you do in keeping the children top of mind. We're a family in Bethel Park with a son at Lincoln Elementary and a daughter at Neil Armstrong. We would like to make sure that our request is known, that we would like school to resume full-time in the fall in person. There were major gaps in the education during the homeschool this spring. There is also no concrete evidence showing that closing schools will prevent the spread of COVID-19 virus. Locally, our numbers have been very low and stayed low. We also do not want part-time in school and part-time homeschool. Children need consistency and structure, especially for a good education. We appreciate your consideration and thank you for all the work that you do. Warm regards, Stacy and Ken Wetzel. I don't,
There were 3 more also.
there are 3 more
Yeah.
from today?
Yes.
Okay, I can't, I haven't gotten them, so if you want to read them.
Angie Tena, 812 Lawrence Road. Thank you to Mrs. Ford for presenting tonight and for sharing her personal history, which took great courage to share. We needed to hear it. As a multiracial family, we have had our own experiences across the years, which attest to the fact that anti-racism education is much needed here in southwestern PA. This is particularly true for a district that is working to modernize its educational programming to keep them relevant for rising generations. Clearly, a district-wide initiative and task force need to be formed to build an effective program. This has to be a top-down directive coming from our school board leadership and is the kind of initiative that belongs in a strategic plan. Could the board please comment on what progress has been made towards a strategic plan and a time frame for when it might be presented to the public? Another one just came in, Aleskra Linden. This item was originally listed on the agenda and I didn't see it yet during the board meeting tonight. My name is Alex Linden and my address is 141 Grand Ridge Road. Edusir Educational Services Agreement. Can you please elaborate on this agreement? What other vendors were considered? How long did the search take place? Who was in charge of the search? Can you please advise how this will affect planning for the upcoming school year? Please elaborate on this. Additionally, regarding the upcoming school year, can you also please advise when you will release the results from the survey recently conducted with the community? I am truly concerned of the very eminent possibility that the schools will not open in the fall, and we as parents will have to find alternate solutions. I understand that the teachers did the best they could with the time allotted to plan for the distance learning this spring, but I am really concerned as I am not a teacher. I am a parent, and the distance learning in the spring was not the best. Students need to go back to school to learn and develop and grow. I speak for myself, and I am sure many others will agree. If I was able to homeschool, I would be doing it already. If I thought homeschool or some combination of public school and online schooling was the best for my children, I would already be doing it. Thanks for your time. Alex Langdon. And there are two comments from Shayna Willis. The first one was just please fix the audio. And the second one is I wanted to thank Mrs. Ford for speaking tonight. It's not always easy to speak our personal truths, and her words took great bravery. She mentioned that we need a plan to move this anti-racism initiative forward. The very personal stories that she shared tonight and that we've seen shared by community members on Facebook lately make it clear that racism in Bethel Park needs to be addressed. Education can help start important conversations. I hope that our district truly looks beyond using her initiative as a Band-Aid, and I urge you to incorporate her goals into a wider plan, a strategic plan. For over a year, Mr. Nagel has been pushing for a strategic plan. This is a basic recommendation from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, and we don't have it. School boards throughout the state are required to engage in strategic planning, and we don't. Most of the community voted to get Mr. Nagel allies who recognize the importance of and will work together towards a strategic plan to move our district forward. We are over 6 months into the new school board's term, and it looks like it's status quo. Mr. Nagel brings up the strategic plan and is ignored in meeting after meeting. Big, bold moves are being made at a great cost to the taxpayer, but not in the context of a strategic plan. Most people are starting to realize this new board may have a plan, but it's not strategic. Shayna Willis, 5844 Monongahela Avenue.
Are we able to respond to just parts of this, mostly
Sure.
in terms of, what our plans are? Pam, would you mind if I make a few comments on that?
Go ahead.
So, number one, obviously, the strategic plan is something that, I think everybody on this board is committed to. A couple elements of it, developing a successful strategic plan, I believe, are having community involvement, community engagement in developing the priorities that go into the plan, the areas we focus on, and developing the action plans that go into that strategic plan also. We've had this thing called coronavirus over the last 4 months that have prevented us from meeting in person. This is the first time in the last 3.5 months that we've been able to meet in person. I would say that even in an environment of wearing, masks and being social distance, I don't think it's a real great environment to have brainstorming sessions and to develop a lot of these, priorities that go into the plan. However, we will be over the next month, and our target is July, that's what we've been discussing as a board, to begin this strategic planning process. And so we will be meeting to at least put together the framework of the plan for developing the plan. And the things that will look like are what are the subcommittees? What are the topics that we want to begin developing those priorities around? And forming those committees from members of the staff, of the community, to begin moving forward. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up is that it is a little bit of an advertisement for everybody who may be here in the meeting or watching on Facebook, is that we will absolutely want community involvement to participate in a number of subcommittees to develop some of the priorities and the actions moving forward as a part of the strategic plan. So I know it seems like nothing's been done, but like I said before, it's my belief anyway, I'm not speaking for the rest of the board, but a strategic plan involves input from the community. It requires face-to-face, it requires brainstorming, it requires a lot of debate. And that's really hard to have over Facebook, over WebEx, as I think we've shown in these board meetings over the last couple months. We've gotten by, but it absolutely has not been the most dynamic and engaging way to hold meetings. We've got to have a better environment for doing that moving forward as we develop the strategic plan.
Thank you. I totally agree with you.
I somewhat agree. I do, I think her larger point was a lot of the moves we're making, like with block scheduling, hawk time, some of the personnel and central administration changes we're making, I think a lot of people feel should have been a bigger part, or part of a bigger strategic plan. They weren't, there wasn't the input in a lot of that we promised.
Any board comments at this time?
Okay, I agree that the strategic plan with everything Mr. Christensen said. I also need to remind people that personnel issues, no matter if they're school personnel issues, business personnel issues, you know, factory personnel issues are all personnel issues, and those are dealt with by the boards, the board of trustees, your CEO. So as some of that goes forward, you have to look at, you know, personnel issues are personnel issues. The other things I wanted to do was to thank Mr. Karazzi for his years of service, to thank Mrs. Flota for her years of service, and my children would like a recording so that at the 4:55 phone call sometime this fall, that it is Mrs. Flota on the phone. And also congratulate Mrs. Cusack on becoming the Dean of Students here at the high school. That's going to round out a great administration at this high school moving forward. So thank you for your service.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Karazzi and Mrs. Flota for all you've both done for our district, your years of service, your dedication to Bethel Park. I know she already left, but I'd like to thank Mrs. Ford for her presentation. And I do think that it's a larger conversation that we need to continue, we need to pursue within our district and within our community. And I'd like to thank all of you who made it in person and everybody who's struggled with the online process of these board meetings over the last few months. And I think we're going to have a great school year coming up. We have a lot of work to do over the summer, and we're going to continue the work to try to make sure that we're successful in the fall.
My only comment, well, not only comment, again, I concur with everyone else about Mr. Karazzi and Ms. Flota. Congratulations, and we wish you well in your retirements. And to Mrs. Ford, it's not easy to step up in a public forum and advocate for change, much needed change. So I commend her for her courage to do so tonight. As far as some of the board comments, not comments, but the community comments, I want to see schools open in the fall traditionally as well. To point out with Mr. Crowley that, you know, I have two working parents in my household, and they're a little bit older now, but if, you know, when they were little, or we were talking about $1,680 a month in child care payments. I don't really want to go back to that either. So I appreciate those comments. Have a good night, and again, congratulations on your retirement.
Other comments?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ms. Ford also for her presentation, and I personally am looking forward to moving this project forward with her. I think it's something that this district certainly could use. Secondly, Matthew's left, but I don't know where he was the last 4 years. I'm so glad to hear that he's going to be putting that bench behind that back door at Memorial. I've stood there for 4 years, and I really could have used something like that, so I'm really pleased about it. And also, Vicki, I just want to say you and I have been through a lot of boards, and Buzzy, and I was on both boards that hired both of these people. They were our top contenders. I want to say if those board people were here, they would be proud to be wishing you the best in retirement, and I was pleased that to be one of them. Enjoy your retirement. Thank you for your service.
Mrs. Dobis, thank you. Now we know who to blame for Vicki and Buzzy. It was Connie's fault.
Connie.
Just kidding. First, Vicki, I hope I get to see you and Lou at LA Fitness someday when it actually opens 100%. So, Vicki is #1 in water aerobics. She's the best, absolutely. So thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I truly appreciate it. And you've been there for the community in so many ways. And maybe we could just pre-record your voice, you know. Buzz, thank you. Whatever I thought I knew about budgets, I do now. I didn't then, but I do now. And thank you for that. And I cherish your years of reading that are coming to you at the library in years to come. And I know that's an inside joke, but Buzz appreciates it. So thank you for everything, Buzz. Thank you so much. And Mrs. Ford, thank you for your presentation tonight. I think that there's a long way for us to move forward on that. Regarding the budget, I think that we still have work to do, and I know that we passed the budget tonight, but I still think there's areas that we can improve, that we need to consider, and the budget's passed. That doesn't mean that we don't keep working hard to make it a better budget. Mr. Villani's not here tonight. He had submitted a grant to the Upper St. Clair Bethel Park Breakfast Rotary. Due to some of the COVID-19 issues, he did receive the award from the Rotary, and unfortunately it's half of what it was for some security windows at the high school. So congratulations on his award. Matthew isn't here any longer, the scout that's going to do the project. I have the opportunity to go to many Eagle Scout awards ceremonies, and I represent the Elks Lodge here in South Hills, and scouting is such a great program, and I wish I could recite the percentage of people who begin scouting who actually end up as an Eagle Scout. It's like 2%, 2.3%, something like that. So I commend Matthew for his diligence and hard work to become an Eagle Scout. And to echo Mr. Workmeister's comments, we have a very important hire coming up here, and it's truly very important. There's a survey out there, and I would ask the community to make sure they get their input in the survey, and keep your eyes and ears open for more information to come, for opportunities to discuss that. And I'm done. Thank you.
I would also like to thank Mr. Krause and Mrs. Flota for their years of service. I know I've only been on the board for a very short time, but for that short time, your work definitely is incredible. It is, you truly work hard every single day, and we see it. So I'd like to thank you for your years of service. Enjoy retirement. It is well deserved.
Thank you.
Oh, same comments. Buzzy and Vicki, it was a pleasure working with you for over 10 years. You were truly dedicated to this district, and it shows. All your efforts will always be there and noticed. And I can congratulate you guys on your retirement. That's Buzzy, Vicki, and Lou, because Lou also got the opportunity to retire, and hopefully you guys have a very joyful retirement and good wish and goodwill.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, at this time I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Mr. Spacuzza, seconded by Mrs. Rule. Mr. Karazi, your last
My last
act
vote.
as board secretary. Put up the vote.
Voting's up.
Woo-hoo! Thank you all very much for attending.